Have you ever had a game that you thoroughly enjoyed playing but totally sucked at? In case you hadn't guessed, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater is one of those games for me. When you watch someone who's great at the game, it turns into a mesmerising sequence of flips, tricks and stunts, all flowing into one another in a hypnotic blur. Unfortunately though, for this video you won't be seeing any of that, as I can safely say that I completely suck at this game, and what you're watching will probably look more like a highlight reel from Jackass. But that's not a bad thing. Often a sign of a great game can be in the simple fact it's fun to play. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater for Nintendo 64 was released in early 2000 by Activision. Developed by Edge of Reality for this console version, it became one of the most popular games of its time, redefining the extreme sports genre and packing what has to be one of the most memorable soundtracks in gaming history. Oddly though, the Nintendo 64 version of the game is not the one that I remember. See, we also had a PlayStation at the time, and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater arrived on PlayStation around 6 months before the other console versions, meaning that this was the version we picked up from day one. I say we because it was in fact my brother who was more interested in this game. After Activision announced that they had signed Tony Hawk in a deal to star in and also to help them produce a new skateboarding game, you just knew that this was going to be something slightly different and not another run-of-the-mill attempt at an extreme sports title. For years, anytime you heard of an extreme sports game, you'd get horrible flashbacks of some poor attempts which had come out ever since video games were in people's homes. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater really aimed to change all of that. With 10 real-life professional skateboarders to choose from, hundreds of moves and combos to pull off, and varied locations from across North America to try and rack up high scores on, everything started to look really good. It's quite rare for the first game in the franchise to nail nearly every aspect that's an important feature, but thankfully Tony Hawk's Pro Skater succeeds in most areas. The gameplay is top notch, and starting a career you pick one of the many skaters and begin your journey to reach high scores, enter competitions and collect items for you to progress. In doing so, you'll unlock new venues to skate and continue your tour across North America. Where the game really excels is in its deep game engine. The game makes flowing from a jump into a grind seamless. Being able to link moves together with ease means that from the action itself, everything continues to be free-flowing and intense. As you develop your skills, each venue becomes an intricate mix of exploration and skill. You'll scope out each to look for every nook and cranny and then think of ways in which you can link moves together in a free-flowing set of moves in imaginative ways. Like all good score-based games, it quickly turns into a battle between your own skill and the risk and reward factor. Do you end your combo early and bag the points, or do you try and sneak in another turn into your jump or boost your score in other different ways? That's exactly what makes Tony Hawk Pro Skater fun to play. Of course, all of this would be pointless if the physics were not on point. Whilst not being a simulation or a purely arcade-style game, Tony Hawk Pro Skater seems to sit somewhere in the middle. Sure, you have all of the wackiness of impossible to survive jumps and falls, but deeper down, everything from your balance, spin, speed and handling does seem spot on. Helping this further are the game's controls. They are simple and intuitive. The analog stick moves you around and the C buttons control everything from jumping, grabs, kickflips and grinds. At first it can feel a little unusual because with most N64 games making use of the A and B buttons, with the Z button thrown in the mix more often than not. With this version though, once you get the hang of it, it becomes almost second nature. Of course, you can always head into the options menu to tweak things around if you really start to struggle. Visually though, here's where things take a turn from the PlayStation version. Whilst the graphics are nice and the expansion pack is put to good use, the PlayStation version looks a lot sharper in almost every given way. Edge of Reality did a good job of porting this from the PlayStation version, and although there is a drop in the texture quality, the frame rate is actually better than the PlayStation version. Personally though, I would have preferred a bump in the visuals over the frame rate, but that's just my own personal opinion. The N64 version suffers from next to no slowdown, and in fact I can't think of a single time when playing where anything caused me problems. It's worth remembering that for a game in which timing is everything, this can play a huge factor. So even if you've played the PlayStation version to death, you may still get a kick out of seeing a slightly different looking game. As expected, the N64 version has none of the full motion video contained in the PlayStation version, and so the intro sequence and completion videos are replaced with, well, a quite bland series of in-game shots and texture model animations. The draw distance is also occasionally worrying. In the smaller contained levels like the warehouse for example, this is not a problem, but as you progress in the game and open up the wider outdoor levels, you'll see entire buildings almost peeling into view. You'll definitely have seen worse on the N64, but with some track memorization this really shouldn't cause you too many problems. Now I would love to say that the game's audio remained intact from this port, but sadly it's perhaps the biggest letdown with this version of the game. I bet there's not a single person watching this video who doesn't instantly start thinking of Superman by Goldfinger when they think of this game. The entire soundtrack is so iconic, I think it's up there with the best soundtracks in any video game, period. Due to the limitations of the card-based format and the huge amount of compression, the N64 version really cheaped out in this area. Gone are the full-length CD quality tracks of the PlayStation version, and instead we're left with heavily compressed, shorter looping versions of the exact same tracks. There are a few tracks missing for the N64 version, and in some cases you'll get the music, but no lyrics to go over it. All in all it's a big shame, but thankfully the sound effects in the game work really well. You'll hear the wheels of your board change as you cross different textures, and the bumps and crashes all have a very deep, bass-heavy thud, which I always love to hear. This is also nice to hear because with blood being removed from the N64 version, the sound effects really are the only way of realising you've had one heck of a bail. Although the N64 is perfect for 4-player sessions, Tony Hawk Pro Skater opts instead for a maximum of 2 simultaneous players. For the N64 version, there's a slight drop in the visual clarity and also a little slowdown. The main problem with playing against a friend is that if one of you is vastly better than the other, then it becomes a pointless competition. If however you are of a similar level, then I'm sure you may get some enjoyment from this multiplayer mode. The game really is a worthy entry into anyone's collection. However, if you also own a PlayStation, then it's really hard to justify not getting that version of the game. It has better visuals, more content, and a soundtrack that's as enjoyable to listen to as the game is to play. So for today's topic of conversation, I'd love to know which game you're terrible at but you just can't help but keep playing. I'd also love to hear your thoughts on why you think the Tony Hawk Pro Skater series seemed to die really suddenly. In my opinion they were on a bit of a roll, but then suddenly the series seemed to come to a standstill. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below, and until next time.